Morning. Hello, everyone. My name is Roberto Alfredo Chiabar-Maceda. I am the Fellowship Specialist for the Humanitarian Shelter and Settlements Program, funded by the United States Agency for International Development's Bureau for Humanitarian Assistance. I also work for Habitat for Humanity International under the Disaster Risk Reduction and Response Team. I am joined by one of our practicum fellows from the inaugural 2024 cohort of the Humanitarian Shelter and Settlements Practicum Fellowship, and her supervisor from the Habitat for Humanity Malawi National Office. I have asked them here today so that our practicum fellow may have the opportunity to ask questions to a humanitarian shelter and settlement sector professional, so that they might impart some insight into the experiences that have shaped their profession and work at their respective national office. At the end of the interview, we will have a period of Q&A for any members of the audience to share their inquiries to both the fellow and the national office profession. So without further ado, I would like to turn it over to you, Anke, so that you may introduce yourself, and then Annie, you may introduce yourself as well.
Thank you so much, Bob, for that introduction. So as Bob had said, I'm one of the fellows of the inaugural cohort. My name is Anke Marais. I am a current student, a master's student at George Washington University, and I'm doing my degree in international development study with a focus on localization and human settlements. And I had the privilege to complete my practicum fellowship in Malawi with wonderful supervisors, including Annie over here. I will turn it over to Annie so that she can introduce herself.
Thank you so much, Anke, and good morning, everyone. My name is Annie Maduka, and I work with Habitat for Humanity Malawi as a disaster risk reduction and response coordinator. We were honored to host Anke in Malawi and to share our experiences with her. Thank you.
All right, so Annie, it's so wonderful to see you again, and thank you so much for in advance for answering all my questions. The first question that I wanted to ask you is whether you could just walk me through your career path and, take me through your journey and what led you to work in the field of humanitarian shelter and settlements and disaster risk reduction and response.
Thank you so much, Anke. My journey as in humanitarian work began with a very strong foundation with a degree in environmental health that I obtained from University of Malawi. And previously, I was working as a safety officer for a certain construction company. But then I'd say that my humanitarian career truly took shape when I joined Habitat for Humanity Malawi in 2016 as a project officer for one of our orphan and vulnerable group housing in the central region of Malawi. So I had worked as a project officer for 4 years and a few months. Then in January 2020, I was offered a job as a disaster risk reduction and response coordinator, where I've been managing multiple projects and supported over 56,000 households with different interventions. The experience that I have, combined with my role as a project officer for OVG program, opened my eyes to the critical need for decent housing here in Malawi. Whilst I was managing the construction of houses and supporting vulnerable groups, I saw that providing safe and decent shelter to everyone, it's truly a humanitarian right. So that's one of the things that have cemented my motivation in this humanitarian work. Apart from that, when I was also young, I've always had a passion in humanitarian work. So I see every project as an opportunity for me to share love and compassion for those that are in need.
Thank you so much, Annie. I can definitely attest to that. It was wonderful working with you and learning from you, and I could always see the compassion that you showed to not just the beneficiaries working alongside Habitat for Humanity, but also to your colleagues and to me as someone that can learn from you. So I really appreciate you sharing some of that knowledge that you've gained over the years. Following up on some of that, so during my time at Habitat for Humanity and my time under your supervision, it was spent mostly working with two projects. One of them was more of a disaster recovery project, and that was with Nantchidwa Camp. And the other one was more of a disaster management project, which was with ECHO in Zumba, Mzuzu, and Blantyre. And I was just wondering whether you could describe how each of these different aspects of disaster risk reduction and response contributes to the resilience of Malawi.
And thank you so much, Anke. I'll start explaining the project that we are implementing in Mulanje, Nantchidwa area. Nantchidwa was previously a village, but due to the impact of Cyclone Freddy, the whole village was washed away, and over 100 people died from this one village. So we've been there since Cyclone happened. We've supported the communities with emergency shelter kits, but that was not enough. We also managed to secure some funding to support them with long-term interventions. So in Nantchidwa, we are constructing 48 houses now, and we've done a lot of interventions, livelihood. We've trained youth in vocation skills. We've built capacity of the local structures in disaster risk management and also on self-shelter skills through BASA. And we've also done a lot of psychosocial support. So we've done a lot of capacity building in Nantchidwa in order to raise awareness on disaster risk management and on how they can be resilient on their own, and on how they can construct disaster resilient houses without requesting external support. Because as we know, funding is not as it used to be. We are facing challenges in securing very big funding to support everyone. So we've done a lot of awareness campaigns on how people can, using the local resources that they have, on how they can construct disaster resilient houses. And also we've done a lot of area warning, disseminating the weather forecast for this year. That's that for Nantchidwa. This project is contributing to the resilience in Malawi in a way that previously most of the community members, they are not aware of climate change. They were not aware on how they can manage, prepare, or respond to disasters. But through the projects that we are implementing in the area, now community members are able to plan in advance, do some anticipatory actions before a disaster happens. And we are very hopeful that if we are to have another disaster, God forbid, but the impact will not be as it used to be. Now communities are trying to build resilience in their communities, which is also contributing to their resilience in Malawi as a country. The other project that we are talking about, ECHO, we are implementing ECHO in the 3 cities of Malawi. We have 4 cities, but the project is being implemented in all the 4 cities. But 3 of these cities, it's Habitat for Humanity Malawi that is coordinating the implementation. So under this project, we are doing a lot of capacity building because with Cyclone Freddy, we noticed that most of the DRR interventions were being implemented in the district, in the rural communities, and no project was being implemented in the cities. So what we've done now, we are now implementing our project in the cities so that we build capacity of these city councils. So we started with establishment of local structures, disaster risk management structures at community level, at city level, building their capacity on how they can prepare for a disaster, on how they can respond to a disaster, building raising awareness on the humanitarian standards that they need to know, that they need to be aware of. So we've done that. And apart from that, we are also installing a pilot area warning system in Blantyre. which after we've done our analysis, we've monitored if it's effective, it will be scaled up to the other cities. And apart from that, we have also done a lot of waste management because we noted that most of these cities are disaster prone, not because they are really disaster prone, but we don't have proper drainage systems. So we've done drainage clearing. We've done also capacity building, teaching communities on how they can turn organic waste into manure because fertilizer it's very expensive. In Malawi, we normally depend on farming. So we've trained our communities on how they can turn organic manure, organic waste into organic manure so that we reduce the amount of waste that is being dumped in the drainage systems. And we've also supported the city councils in coming up with bylaws on how they should manage waste in the cities so that we still reduce the amount of waste that is blocking the drainage systems. Um, Apart from that, we've also done contingency planning at city level and at ward level because these city councils previously they didn't have any contingency plan, mud hazard contingency plans. So we've supported them in coming up with mud hazard contingency plans, drawing out evacuation routes, identifying evacuation centers that can be used, mapping out stakeholders that can be contacted if we are to have a disaster. And from the contingency plans, we are able to come up with some priority preparedness activities which should be implemented before rainy season. So we've done capacity building in search and rescue. We've done capacity building in first aid. We've also done capacity building in camp management, and we've given them tools that they can use during disasters. So we've done a lot under ECHO. I cannot preempt everything, but all these are truly contributing to the resilience of Malawi because now our cities will be resilient through these interventions. Because with Cyclone Freddy, Blantyre was heavily affected when we are not supposed to be affected, but just because we didn't have measures in place which can make our city to be resilient.
Thank you so much, Annie, for expanding a bit more on some of the projects that we worked on. And it's really wonderful to hear a bit more about how a lot of them has progressed. Even in the short time that I've been away, it's a lot of activities have taken place, and it's lovely to hear about that. You've actually answered one or two of my other questions that I had, so I will go on to another. And this is a bit of a follow-up on some of the points that you touched on in your answer, especially regarding Nantchidwa camp and some of the vocational training that we've done there. So when I worked with you and Habitat for Malawi in Nantchidwa camp, I think at that point, Habitat for Malawi was busy building 37 of the homes for some of the households who lost their homes. But in addition to this, there was the vocational training that we were facilitating, as well as livelihood training in the form of briquette making for some of the women's groups in Nantchidwa. And then there was the psychosocial sessions, which I think took place before I had arrived there. And as well as the drilling of a new borehole. And I know at the point just before I left, we were busy getting a proposal ready for a water reticulation system. So, and then as well as touching on the ECHO project, as you mentioned, there's so many different moving parts. There's a waste management side of it. There's manure manufacturing. And I'm curious to know, what do you think is the importance of these very integrated responses in DRR and humanitarian shelter and settlements, not just within Malawi, but even at a global scale, to think of this sector as more integrated?
Thank you so much, Anke. There are advantages of having a holistic approach when we are doing humanitarian work, because when a disaster happens, several sectors are affected. WASH is affected, health, nutrition, shelter is the worst affected, several things affected during a disaster. And just us going there with housing, it's not enough. It's not enough. Housing is not enough on its own because we need to provide now sustainable housing solutions whereby almost everything is there. So our approach here in Malawi is that when we are going out with recovery interventions, we normally go there with a holistic approach, incorporating housing, wash, and a little bit of healthy education if necessary. So as you rightly said that in Nigeria, we are doing house construction and we have also done a lot of wash interventions, drilling of the borehole. We've done some hygiene promotions. We've done some chlorine distributions before you came. And we've done a lot of reforestation. We planted over 10,000 trees before you came. So with this holistic approach, we are able to assist the affected communities in several ways. As you've mentioned that we've also done a livelihood. Within Anchidwa, the people lost almost everything. And us just giving them houses, then we're exposing those vulnerable populations to other risks because we target women who are not married, chronically ill, orphans, and they might go into other bad behaviors because a house is not enough. So we try to look at other factors that revolve around our lives. So that's why we incorporated the issue of livelihood intervention so that economically these partner families should be empowered. They should be able to stand on their own and provide their needs, apart from them just getting a house. Additionally, we also provided psychosocial sessions. We did HIV prevention trainings and malaria prevention training, and we also distribute mosquito nets because with the situation we have in Mulanje, HIV prevalence, it's very high compared to the one that we have at national level. So in all our interventions, we try as much as possible to raise awareness on HIV and AIDS. We teach them on management, prevention, and all other factors, even on their treatment. We tackle all those areas just to make sure that healthy-wise, they are also okay. And regarding wash, because the area, they didn't have any borehole, that area, we managed to secure funding so that we can also provide, we should promote access to clean water to avoid waterborne diseases. So with the holistic approach, I feel like it's a good approach whereby with very little resources targeting one area, but having a holistic approach, you are able to maximize the impact of your interventions in that area. You are able to tackle several aspects that affect the affected communities. Of course, in certain scenarios, it's not just habitat. We also engage other stakeholders who are working there. For example, for Nigeria, when we went there for a response, we noted that people had stayed over 3 days without food because they are completely cut off from the rest of the country. So we managed to reach out to nutrition cluster, and WFP was kind enough to send a helicopter to come and supply food items to the communities. And we've also worked with other departments to supply several, like now, we've engaged Ministry of Health to also supply to target the remaining households from the 96 with the distribution of mosquito nets, because there's a campaign that government is implementing. They're distributing mosquito nets. So we only supplied mosquito nets to 17, and the rest will be covered by government. So where we don't have enough resources, we also manage to reach out to other stakeholders so that they can come in and support. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Annie. From that, I do have a quick follow-up question before I ask you a bit more about the coordination and partnerships. With such a holistic response and integrated response, given that Habitat for Humanity as a whole tends to be more focused on housing, what are some of the challenges of having to coordinate all these different aspects of a response as the DRR coordinator, but also within the organization?
Thank you so much, Anke. From my experience, I've noted that when a disaster has happened, several organizations they come forward to support with several response initiatives. But when we move into the recovery phase, it's only 2 or 3 that will remain. So for example, with Cyclone Freddy, over 100,000 people were affected, and organizations came to support with different initiatives. But in the recovery phase, you find that it's only 3 organizations countrywide that are still doing that are still providing shelter assistance. It's just Habitat, Malawi Red Cross, and we also have IOM who are constructing houses, but the need is too huge. So with this, with the limited resources that we have as national organizations, we are unable to support, to meet the demand that is there in the country. So fund, availability of funds, it's one of the biggest challenge that we normally face. Even in the response phase, you find that the need is very huge, and the resources that we have are not enough to cover at least half of the need in the ground. And that has led to some compromises by the organizations whereby they come in as shelter cluster members. And we have a standard as shelter cluster of the non-food items or emergency shelter kits that we need to distribute to the affected communities. But because they don't have enough funding, we've seen organizations distributing plastic papers, and with very little non-food items, just to make sure that they support more households. So limited funding, it's another thing that is making most organizations to do some compromises on the support that is being given to affected communities. The other challenge that we are also facing here in Malawi is that there's increasing frequency of natural disasters. And as a country, I wouldn't say that we have the capacity to manage these disasters. We don't have. That was evident enough during Cyclone Freddy, whereby we didn't even have helicopters to go and support. Like Nigeria, they were cut off for 3 days. And as government, they didn't have any support to send some helicopters and maybe do some search and rescue or provide food items to those that have been affected. So disasters are increasing, and we should be honest, the frequency is going to it's going to continue. We are not going back because climate change is here, but as a country, we don't have capacity, and it's something that we are working towards in under shelter cluster on how we can manage our interventions, on how we can cope with these disasters. That's why we are doing a lot of capacity building in trying to build resilience of communities and resilience of Malawi so that we minimize or we mitigate the impact of these natural disasters. And the last challenge that I can share with you is the complexity that comes with coordination needs among stakeholders. You find that not all organizations participate in the cluster system, but as humanitarian workers, we always work in the cluster system. So those that do not participate, normally they don't follow standards that have been set there, and it's really hard for you to come and help them or support them. So coordination is one of the complex issue that we facing here in Malawi. Under shelter cluster, I would say that our cluster lead and co-lead, they're really trying to make sure that everyone is incorporated, everyone is aware of the standards. And we've managed to come up with, we call them Malawi designs, which have been shared across all shelter cluster members. And they've been also shared across Malawi so that people should have an opportunity to find a standard plan for a house. It has everything because in Malawi poverty levels are very high and not everyone can afford to have a plan from an architect. But as shelter cluster, we've worked so hard. Now we have plans that have been distributed to every Malawian for free. Yeah, so basically that's what I can share with you, Anke. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Annie. I feel like I have so many questions leading from that too, but given the time, I'll go to my next one, which also has to do with collaboration and coordination because, during my time there, we had the inaugural National Housing Symposium, but I was also lucky enough to meet some of the people that you work with in the South, UNIOM and Red Cross and CRS. And I was wondering, given that Habitat for Malawi, you do take this holistic approach to your shelter and settlement solutions and interventions, but you also collaborate a lot in the shelter cluster in Malawi. I was wondering if there are any partnerships at an organizational level that have been particularly impactful in your opinion, and why that has been so impactful.
Okay. Thank you so much, Anke. In terms of collaboration, as Habitat, we don't work independently. We work through the clusters, either shelter cluster, wash cluster, and that has been very helpful in our interventions and has helped us to maximize the impact that our interventions have in the communities. So through the shelter cluster, we've been in partnership with several like-minded organizations. I'll give you an example of IOM. Through the shelter cluster, we are able to draw some funds from OCHA so that we support people who have been affected by Cyclone Freddy with emergency shelter kits, non-food items, as well as cash. So that was done because of the good partnership, our participation in the shelter cluster, whereby IOM was able to notice that we have Habitat here and we can contact them so that we can work together. And the core of our programming, we also work with the local authorities. They are the center of our implementation because we do this to ensure that there's sustainability of our interventions. Because today Habitat can be in District A, but tomorrow we might not be there. But there's need for the interventions to be continued even beyond Habitat. So we work hand in hand from programming, implementation, even at close-out meeting with the local authorities. And community members are also at the core of our interventions. And to make sure that our interventions are very, very impactful, we also use the local knowledge that we find in each and every target area or community that we are working in. We do some sessions so that we gather some local knowledge and we start from there to build their knowledge to where we want. So collaboration is indeed key. Currently, we are working with the UNDP under ECHO. We got funding from them. We started working with them in 2019, and they've been one of our consistent partners over the years. We've constructed over 360 houses with UNDP. And this time around, we are also working on this project, which is ending next year in June. So I'd say that we work with several partners and we work with government and local authorities as well as communities so that there's a collaboration. And we also do this to avoid duplication of efforts. whereby Habitat is there doing one thing and another partner is also doing the same. It doesn't make sense. It's better we merge our resources and do something that is bigger. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Annie. You actually led very well into my next question, because one thing that has really impacted me, and that I think it's something that I kind of knew in the back of my head, but which I really got to learn while I was in the field with you. These partnerships, the partnerships with the local authorities, as well as with other organizations, they're immensely important. But I do feel like more than anything, it really is the partnerships that one builds in the communities themselves. And for Habitat for Malawi, we make well, I guess you take part in participatory approach to safe shelter awareness with a lot of these community building and partnerships in the community to build the knowledge. And as you mentioned, you take some of the local knowledge and then you also build on that knowledge. So considering that so much of Malawi's population lives in rural areas, and also due to that, so much of Habitat for Malawi's interventions are in these rural areas, such as Nanchidwa Camp and Nsanje, Palumbe. So a lot of these are very hard to reach areas. How does Habitat for Humanity Malawi make use of PASA methods, both in humanitarian shelter and settlements and DRR programming? So yes, I guess what have you found to be the most effective approaches for this kind of method and community engagement and participation, but especially to ensure that the intervention's longevity goes beyond Habitat for Humanity Malawi's involvement in that area?
Thank you so much, Anke. Yeah, you're right that as Habitat for Humanity Malawi, our interventions are more participatory. From planning phase throughout implementation. And one of the approaches that we use is through PASA, participatory approach for self-shelter awareness. So with this participatory approach, we are able to help communities to identify their own potential on how they can deal with their own hazards, on how they can mitigate the impact of disasters on their own without requesting external support. Because most of the times, in as much as us organizations, we go there to support, to find solutions, but truly speaking, those communities, they already have solutions to their own problems. So with participatory approach, these communities, they are able to say, okay, this is the problem that we have, and these are solutions. And through this participatory, you find that maybe through problem box that we do under PASA, you find that 98% of the problems that are identified, they can be dealt with within the communities themselves without requesting external support. And maybe just 2% of those problems are the ones that they may require external partners to come in and support them. So apart from dealing with shelter safety, but the participatory approach help the communities themselves to identify their own potentials, and they're able to identify opportunities within their communities, which can be used to increase community resilience. And apart from that, here in Malawi, women participation is not that good. Um, Men, they dominate decision making. And through PASA, we've used PASA to enhance the confidence in women, to involve women in decision making on issues that are impacting their lives. If they are to do some interventions in the communities in order to increase resilience, women are now able to take part in the decision making, because they are the marginalized and they don't have a say in most of the decisions that are made at community level. So we've seen that with the participatory approach, we are able to have a very bigger picture of the problems that are existing in the communities, the opportunities, and the solutions that can be provided in order to increase the resilience of communities. So this participatory approach, it's really working because you find that as Habitat for Humanity, for example, Nanchidwa, we are only constructing now 48 houses, but over 100 households were affected in Nanchidwa. So with the PASA, those that have capacity to construct on their own, they are able to utilize the knowledge that they get through PASA in order for them to construct a disaster resilient house. Because from experience, we've noticed that some of the community members, they have the financial capacity to construct a house, but they don't have the technical know-how on how they can construct a disaster resilient house. And they're among the casualties that are affected every year when a disaster has happened. So we build capacity so that those with the financial muscle can be able to utilize this knowledge. They build back better principles when they are constructing their shelters. And with the PASA, we are able to reach out to so many households with these skills, and they're able to utilize it. I'll give an example. Recently, we were in Sanje, where we are also implementing a recovery project. It's a pilot. Um, we've done a lot of PASA. We trained 50 community members in PASA. But as of last week, these 50, they have in 10 trained 1,047 households in PASA. And they've been doing a lot of awareness campaigns. They have established tree nurseries. They want trees. It's a newly located area where there are no trees in the area where we are working in. So they have established tree nurseries so that they can plant trees. They have identified opportunities, PASA, through the same PASA. They have identified opportunities which they can leverage on in order to improve their economic well-being, and also in order to increase the resilience of the communities. They've been carrying out drama groups. They've even come up with some kind of bylaws which should be used when everyone is constructing a house in that area. So this participatory approach, it enhances ownership and also sustainability of the interventions that are being done there. Community members are able to take over the interventions that are being done there, even when habitat it's not there. So yeah, participatory approach is really, really good in order to ensure sustainability of interventions and also to maximize the impact of the interventions that we are doing in the communities. Thank you.
Oh, really quickly, Anke, could you reiterate what the acronym for PASA stands for?
Yes, PASA stands for Participatory Approach to Safe Shelter Awareness. So it's an 8-step method that was developed by Habitat for Humanity and the Red Cross. Yes. Thank you so much for expanding more on that, Annie. And I have to say, I think PASA is one of the methods that I admire so much. And seeing how it worked in Nanchidwa, visiting some of the sites where some of the communities started building, their homes in a disaster resilient manner was really wonderful to see. I also really admire the way that it really leverages women, like female leadership in the communities. A quick follow-up question that I actually have on PASA is whether you have noticed any communities where Habitat for Humanity was not directly involved with PASA, but where they also started implementing disaster resilient housing or some of the same knowledge that Habitat for Humanity taught the PASA groups that has then proliferated to other communities without Habitat for Humanity's intervention. I was just curious whether that has happened in Malawi.
Yeah, thank you so much, Anke. I'll give you a recent example for Nsanje, where we are only targeting 3 group village heads. And during our awareness meeting last week, I was surprised to see some chiefs from other villages. So I was like, what is happening? So I didn't know that these chiefs, they were able to identify their own shelter needs, and they used the committees that were trained in the other villages to go and train their people in their villages. So it's something that can be easily replicated because this is knowledge which will still be there. And when communities have identified their own shelter needs, they're able to invite other committees who have the capacity to go and train the households in their community. So it's something that is being done. And I would also give you an example. In our interventions, we also build capacity of local artisans. Um, we've trained, since 2020, we've trained over 3,000 local artisans in the communities that we are working in. So the issue behind is to build the capacity and provide the necessary tools for these local artisans to continue supporting other community members who are also willing to construct disaster resilient house on their own. So these local artisans, they are even hired by other um, community members in other villages where Habitat is not even working there. For Sanje, we trained 40 for the pilot project where we are working on. But 30 of these local artisans, they've been hired by government. They are now constructing schools in this area because it's a new area. It was initially a farmland. So they don't have any social amenities. So government now it's coming in to construct schools, bringing in water. So these local artisans are the ones that are championing the construction works in this area. So yeah, it's happening. It's happening. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Mm.
I was also thinking about the ECHO project, and on one of our monitoring visits, we had worked a lot with one of the female groups that I believe Habitat for Humanity had helped set up through, PASA methods, which was waste management committees in these settlements. And I was actually curious whether on the disaster management side, you have seen that other communities might have set up committees like this, or that work more on the management side versus the recovery side.
Okay, thank you so much, Anki. I'll give you an example for Zomba. With the Eco project, we are targeting only four wards per city. But when we went to Zomba, when we presented our project to the political arm, the councillors, they said, no, you can't just target 4 wards out of the 10 wards that we have in Zomba City. These interventions, they need to be replicated even in the other wards. But our resources couldn't allow us to target all the 10 wards. So what we did was we said, okay, for the capacity building interventions, we are going to invite a few members from all these wards so that they participate and share the knowledge to the others. So from project inception, uh, we managed to involve at least 4 or 5 committee members from the other wards. I tell you, as I'm speaking now, we have proper disaster risk management committees in all the 10 wards. All the 10 wards, they now have contingency plans with clear evacuation routes and clear evacuation maps. All the 10 wards, they now have waste management committees, but they're working without our supervision for the other wards. And they also have bylaws. The bylaws which you assisted us with coming up with some graphics so that we summarize everything. We also have those bylaws in the other wards. So yeah, community members are able, when they see that the interventions are truly addressing their needs and the gaps that they have in their communities, they're always willing to take over. So this is something that has been has been implemented in all the 10 wards, but Habitat was only working in 4 wards. And they are now calling for scaling up, that we need to scale up our interventions and address the issue of illegal settlement, because these areas were not planned. So people are just constructing anyhow. And there's a calling that we need to go there and do and support them with proper planning and come up with proper roads in their community so that they are um, well planned. And the other issue is under ECO, where we are working, because we are targeting areas that we are not planned, city council is not able to offer some waste collection activities in those unplanned areas because there are no road networks. But I tell you, through the interventions that we've done under ECO, um, we've come up with some plans, strategies, and City Council is now supporting even these unplanned areas with waste management uh, waste management activities. They're able to go there and collect waste management, and they've issued some proposals to other donors that they need more skip bins because the coverage now is so huge than it was before. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Annie. It's really amazing to see like the effects of PASA and really involving the community in these interventions. It's something that I hope to take forward in my career. On that note, I know we're drawing close to the end. I have one question, one last question, which is, what advice would you give someone like me who is just starting out in this career in humanitarian shelter and settlements and DRR, in terms of what skills would be valuable, how we can, ensure that we're open in this career and pursue what we want in this career, but also contribute to this field. Yes, I guess any advice you would have for young professionals like me.
Okay. I think for someone who would like to, like yourself, would like to do some humanitarian work, I think the key skill that you need to have is project management. You need so that you are able to manage the projects that you have. I'd recommend the PMD project management course that Habitat for Humanity does. I'm one of the beneficiaries. And also, I'd say that you need to have some stakeholder engagement skills, because with humanitarian work, you don't work in isolation. You always work with multiple stakeholders. So you need to have some skills on how you can collaborate, on how you can partner, and on how you can manage stakeholders in the humanitarian work that you're doing. Apart from that, me being not someone who have done construction, but I'm able also to manage some construction works. You also need to learn the technical aspects in the field that you'll be working in, so that you are on top of things in your interventions, in your programming, in the projects that you're working in, despite you not being someone technical, but you still need to have some skills on how you can manage some construction works and monitor. Apart from that, you also need to have some monitoring and evaluation skills. You need to be able to track your projects, see if you're on the right track, and if you're not. If you're not, you need to be able to draw some strategies on how you can expedite the interventions, even in the shortest period that you're remaining with. You also need to have some team management capabilities. With disaster response, I've seen myself managing over 35 um, officers across Malawi. So you need to have some team management skills. You need to see how you can manage your team, how you can keep them motivated, how you can help them build their career, and also um, how you can be able to, hello?
We can
Hello,
still hear you if you
we
can
can
hear
still
us.
hear you.
Okay. I think my network was not stable. Yeah, but you need some skills on how you can manage teams and how you can manage people. Apart from that, you also need to have knowledge on the humanitarian standards and practices, because what we do under humanitarian is we just follow the standards that we are there. We don't compromise, come rain or sunshine. So you need to be on top of your head. You should be able to know the humanitarian standards, what you need to do in certain situations, how you need to manage emergencies. Yeah, all those skills, you need to have them. And you also need to have some strategic planning, because with humanitarian work, sometimes you can have a very big workload. So you need some strategic planning skills. Yeah, basically, that's what I can advise you, Anki. But I know you already have those.
Oh,
All right, that was my final question. I know we do need some time for Q&A in the end, so I try to leave some space. But Annie, thank you so much for answering all my questions. I have tons more, but I'll ask you those in another time.
Thank you so much, Anki. It was nice having you here. Thank you.
okay, yeah, we're now going to open it up for Q&A with the audience. If anyone would like to ask questions to our practicum fellow or our humanitarian shelter and settlement sector professional, please include your questions in the chat and I will read them out to them. We have a question from Jocelyn Keller for Anke. How did your experience during this fellowship shape your understanding of working in the humanitarian field? And then a question for Annie. How do you envision the future of DRR evolving as its importance grows in response to escalating impacts of climate change? So we'll go with Anke first, and then Annie, you can think about your answer as Anke responds.
Thank you so much for the question, Jocelyn. I think my answer for this would be very long and expansive if I had enough time to continue. I think the biggest learning for me has been really how integrated the humanitarian field really is. There's various sectors within it. There's the shelter sector, there is the nutrition side, there is the emergency response side, but there's also the risk management side. But more than anything, it's really been the community involvement for me, and that I've seen not just through some of the times that I got to be involved with PASA trainings or PASA follow-ups, and see how those PASA groups work, but also just seeing the resilience of the communities and how they build themselves up. Because at the end of the day, especially in this field where it is shelter and settlements and emergency responses, it's when it happens, the communities are the ones that are there, and sometimes they have to rely on themselves for the first day or the first response, the initial response, before anybody else can really step up and start coordinating responses. So for me, it's really been a learning curve on how to work with communities and alongside them, and not just view them as beneficiaries. I think that's a very important thing for me, because it's so much more than that. They're the actual leaders at the end of the day. They will take it beyond an organization's interventions, and they will carry on when the organization is left. So I think that for me has been one of the biggest learnings. I hope that answered the question, Jocelyn.
I think it's my turn now. On how I envision the future of DRR. I think DRR is growing, and because climate change is now here, and you need to accept that. I feel that there's need for more integration of climate change interventions in all our disaster risk reduction interventions that we are implementing. For example, us as Habitat for Humanity, we are a shelter organization. We provide shelter there's need for stronger integration of climate resilience in all our shelter programs. And there's need for us as organizations to come up with some sustainable solutions on how we can support the people, on how we can support the communities with some interventions on how they can handle issues of climate change through shelter. I'll give an example. Habitat, of course, it's very small, but it's something that we are envisioning to scaling up. Here in Malawi, we don't have poverty levels are very high, and construction materials at the same time they are also very high, such that people don't have cannot afford to procure some of the construction materials, especially cement. So what we've done now, we have a plant where we are producing some sustainable construction materials. And currently we are promoting one of our sustainable material interlocking blocks. These blocks can be, you can construct this house, the superstructure walls without using any cement. And it's something that as Malawians, they need for them to have these decent shelters that we are promoting. So we need to integrate a lot of a lot of climate resilience in all our shelter programming, so that we holistically assist the communities that we are working in. Apart from that, I also feel like we need some sustainable funding models for our recovery projects, so that issues of climate change should also be well taken care of. I'll give an example here in Malawi. Issues of climate change are not very famous. They are not very, very famous. So as an organization, we are also working towards raising awareness on climate change. So issues of sustainable funding are also very, very good in addressing these issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Annie. This next question is from Jaime Monk. It's for Anke. What valuable lessons have you learned from working closely with a mentor and professionals in Malawi?
Thank you so much, Jaime, for that question. As with my previous answer, I think there's a lot more that I could list. Right now, off the top of my head, I think there's two really important lessons that I learned. I think the first one is adaptability and flexibility. I saw this a lot in the field, especially with Annie. Annie, as the DR coordinator in the south of Malawi, I know, there's often shortage of resources. Right now in Malawi, there's fuel shortage. Sometimes there's not enough drivers, or the materials are taking longer to get to a site, or you have a day planned out, but then, either the roads are really rough, or there's issues with the car, or, there's often a lot of unexpected situations. And through Annie, I have seen and learned that flexibility and problem solving is really a key. I think in any field, but really, I think in this field, it's so important, because you can go out in the field and the day will turn out completely different, but it doesn't have to be a waste. You can still, you can turn around and say, like, okay, well, we can't go and monitor this village, but this one is closer, let's walk there. Or this bridge is broken, but it's okay, let's turn back and go somewhere else. Or, the people that we said we would meet up with aren't showing up here now, so let's go meet up with other people. Or the materials aren't arriving soon enough, but let's continue with another part of the project. So it's constant problem solving and kind of rehashing your approach to get to the same goal. And I think that's really valuable that I learned from Annie. And I think she's really amazing at that adaptability and problem solving. I think another big thing has been the collaboration and coordination with different partners. And I think something unexpected from, I guess, my own experiences and perhaps biases towards certain government programming in my own home country, which is South Africa, was the collaboration with the government and local authorities. I think Habitat for Humanity approaches it really well. And I think that really, it attributes to the longevity of projects. And as Annie had pointed out, even, the project in Zomba, how by involving local authorities effectively, you can really make the program and the project reach more people. And I think building those kind of collaborations and relationships is important, and to to build that rapport and trust, not just with the local authorities, but then with the communities as well. And then within the shelter cluster, that collaboration is also really important. I was not there with any of the immediate responses. And unfortunately, I missed a very interesting simulation, which I know Habitat did with IOM and Red Cross and some other stakeholders. But yes, I think those are the two most valuable lessons that I learned, but there's a myriad of other smaller ones as well.
Thank you, Anke. This next question is from Charles Wood. Thank you all for this webinar. It's been very insightful. He has a question about the political aspect of implementing these programs. How do Habitat standards balance the location's political will? Are there any unexpected difficulties or challenges? Annie, I think you might have the background for this.
Okay. Thank you so much. In terms of political interference, that's one of the biggest challenges that we've had. I'll give an example. A certain project which was being implemented in Chikwawa, we got a stop order because of political interference. Because we're implementing the project in one community and this other community was not targeted. So he thought that he would not have something for campaigning. They'll say that your friend has constructed houses, but you've done nothing in our community. They wanted to use our interventions for campaign purposes. So political interference, it's one of the biggest challenges, even here in Malawi. We are facing that. However, in order to deal with the political interference, the first thing that we do is we engage the political arm at the inception of our project. We outline our goals and how we are going to implement and on how we are going to manage everything so that everything should be clear and no one should interfere. After that, we've also learned that it's good for us to have some complaints and feedback mechanism in all our programming. So in order to deal with some politics in the communities, we have these committees who handle almost everything. And we have a channel. If the problem cannot be solved by the communities themselves, they are able to channel it to the district local councils. So complaints and feedback has also been helpful, apart from the meetings that we have with the political arm. Another thing that has also helped us to deal with this problem is we do set some joint monitoring visits with the political figures in that community so that they should be aware of how we are progressing and how we are implementing our interventions. So yeah, political interference is there, but their involvement from inception has proved to be very helpful in dealing with them, and also the establishment of complaints and feedback mechanism.
Thank you, Annie. Okay. If we have no more questions from the audience, I have a few of my own. Annie, I'd like to start with you. What comes next for you in the Humanitarian Shelter and Settlements field? What comes next for Habitat for Humanity Malawi?
Okay. Thank you so much, Roberto. As for Habitat for Humanity Malawi, we are still continuing with implementation of our recovery projects. Still working on several proposals so that we at least support more households because the demand here is so huge. So we are working on proposals and we are also working on finding coming up with some innovations on how we can do with other issues to do with the disaster risk management. Under ECHO, there's an app that is being developed which will be used in order to raise awareness of any impending disaster across Malawi. It's still in its early stage, but we are still working on it and would like to monitor it and see how it's going to perform. And if it performs well, it's something that will be scaled up across all Malawi. So we are still looking at some innovations on how we can deal with issues of DRR, coming up with some innovations on how we can deal with issues of climate change. Some of the interventions that we've done, it's the waste management trainings where people are turning organic waste into organic manure. But we are looking at coming up with even some interventions whereby we are able to turn plastic bottles, because plastic it's another big waste here in Malawi. So we are exploring some innovations which we can employ in order to deal with plastics, and also promoting the sustainable materials which people can adopt, which are less cheaper than the normal construction that is happening now. So yeah, we are looking at other innovations on how we can best support the communities across Malawi so that we deal with the issues of climate change and disaster risk management. As for me, um, still learning. I keep on learning because things keep changing in humanitarian work. So there's continuous learning, and yeah, looking for more challenges and more opportunities so that I support a, a big number of community members with our interventions. Yeah, that's what I can share, Roberto. Thank you.
Thank you. And Anke, what is next for you now that the cohort is closing for the year?
I'm still a student, so I am almost ending the semester, and next January I will start my final semester of my master's degree in international development. So that's right now the priority. We're working on very interesting capstone projects. I'm also, I was inspired by Habitat for Humanity Malawi to also do an independent study instead of just taking another class on climate migration and its effects on urbanization and displacement. So I'm very excited to start that next semester. Other than that, there's nothing big, it's a continuous search to learn and to grow, internships and jobs. But right now I'm focusing on my studies. So yes.
Great, thank you, Anke. All right, well, I would like to thank everyone for joining us today for this webinar. Thank you again, Anke and Annie. Your insights were very, very interesting to hear, and I'm sure were a great resource for everyone who joined us today. Anke, best of luck in your future endeavors. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you.